Hello, Sangha. It's April 24th, 2015, and welcome to the Abbots address for this week. So, a question was sent in, and this is a good one because it comes up periodically. Why do people leave? Why do people leave the practice? Why do people leave the Sangha? And that's a good question. Particularly if you're someone who's really into your practice and you're really engaging in it and you're getting a ton out of this, it can be hard to imagine why someone would leave. And furthermore, what's really kind of under there is, am I going to leave? Gosh, when I first came here, a person A or B or C was so involved, and they seem like they're such a fixture in the place. You think they've always been there because they've been there since you showed up. And gosh, they're not around anymore. And did they run into some secret boogeyman under the bed that, as soon as under the zafu, right? Some boogeyman under the zafu that if I sit long enough, I'll run into and I'll quit too. And, it can be very kind of scary. It can, sow doubt in the person. So let me try to address this in a little bit. There's no one clean answer to why people leave, other than to say people leave because they do. But that's typically a little unsatisfactory feeling. But it's true. People leave because they want to, and because they can. That's another thing. And what I mean by that is that really everyone who's, let's say, left the community or left practice, they do for very much their own reasons. There really isn't just one reason why, at least in my experience. People have very, very different reasons for leaving practice, just as they have different reasons for entering it, you could say. And they're able to leave because, they can. And frankly, like in some other teachers of earlier time, let's say, there has been some tendency, maybe today still somewhere, I don't know, I think it's harder to do today, thankfully, but this attitude that, this is the only way to practice, and if you don't practice this way, meaning my way, with this group, in exactly the way I say, then you'll never realize the truth of your life. Or you'll never realize the Buddha Dharma, or your practice will be, all wrong, or whatever, So in the past, in the earlier generation of teachers, I think some of them, anyway, did kind of have this view, and it was either overt and blatant, or it was kind of subtle and kind of humming in the background all the time. And that's abusive, in my opinion. I really think that's abusive. To tell people, sincere people, that, for anyone to stand up and say that they are the one true gate to reality, to the Dharma or whatever, and that no one else has anything of value in this area, and leave me and you'll never know the truth. Come on, that's ridiculous, in my opinion. And thankfully, with the internet and Google and searching and being able to find different teachers and connect with other points of view on the Dharma, I don't think that's a sustainable attitude, and I'm grateful for that. So here, particularly in this community, if someone wants to leave or wants to take a break or something like that, my response to that is I don't try to convince, cajole, persuade, influence, sell, I don't do anything to try to make that person feel anything other than honored for their choice to take a break or to investigate other options. Because I know, honestly, that even if, say, I were to influence someone for the minute to stay into the practice, it's not going to work. It can't work. I mean, the way it looks like, if someone is really healthfully engaged in their practice, is you can't stop them. You can't keep them from it. I see it all the time. We've got a lot of people here that you can't keep them from engaging in the practice. Now, that's what it looks like. That's when it's healthy, in my opinion. That's what it looks like. There's this even in the midst of doubt and, the struggles of confronting the barriers that are inevitable, even in the midst of those, which can be wrenching, there's this core of just this perseverance thing, this great intensity, this great I'm going to do this, and that's really where it's at, for me. When I've got a student like that, I know I've got a live one on the line here. If it's somebody that has to constantly be, cajoled and persuaded and cookies and milk and a warm blanket, well, it's not going to sustain, really. So there are times for that when a teacher will be that way with a student, but ultimately it can't stay like that. Somewhere along the line, let's put away the cookies and milk and sit straight on your own cushion and take care of the great matter directly. And you can do that. You definitely can do that. People can do that. It happens all the time. I'm in such a ridiculously privileged place at the moment because I get to interface with people who are doing that, and they inspire me constantly. And they're not necessarily the people you would think. They're not always the shiny, flashy students. You can't really tell, actually, by the look of it, maybe. So that being said, this business of confronting the barrier is a real thing. So a lot of times, or let's say sometimes, when people confront the real barrier that is required to really own one's own practice, to really embody the practice the way it's possible to, when you confront those barriers, it's not always pleasant. And the teacher's job is not to make it really pleasant all the time, no matter what. The teacher's job is to be real. And that's certainly been the case with my teacher, my teachers. I've been lucky enough to study with a number of different people. And to a person, when shove starts to come to push, one of the common things to all of them is they have this real capacity to let me go through my own process and let me deal with the stuff that needs dealing with in the context of them as a mirror for me to interface with. But that their job has never been, nor do I see my job, to make it comfortable no matter what all the time. This is not like that. If you go back to the Buddha, the original story, the way it's told of our tradition, of the Buddha and his own working through to awakening, he sat under the Bodhi tree and didn't just sit there and have a nice, lovely time. He was not sitting there having sake, admiring the beauty of the cherry blossoms, while the birds chirped away beautifully for the whole night. That wasn't what happened, the way the story is told. The way the story is told, what did he do? He had to confront serious barriers. And we're talking about sweating blood here, metaphorically. Thank you, But really, it is like that. That's a mythological or factual, either way, story that there's a trajectory of development. And that trajectory of development requires passing through barriers that are yourself. No one's setting up the barrier. It's you. You are the barrier. It's just realizing that and learning how to wield it, see. So whether it's great, terrifying armies hurling fire arrows at you, or the seductions of pleasure or addiction, or, whatever, the ego's final burst of, don't do this to me. There's plenty of barrier there. And so one of the reasons why some people leave is they get to those barriers and say, I'm out of here. I don't want to confront that. Didn't sign up for that, and that's okay. That's okay. I mean, in my heart of hearts, sure, I'd prefer everybody to completely awaken and dedicate themselves to truth, to practice, to alleviating the suffering of all beings and themselves. But ultimately, that's the person's own call. So, people split there, for sure. Um, and I guess another thing that's occurring to me is that, there's this shift that happens somewhere along the line when a person's practice is healthy. And that is that most people enter the practice, in fact, I'd say pretty much everybody enters the practice for themselves. Either we're in great pain or suffering and we need to figure some way to be at peace with our life, or there's just a really, really strong resonance with the practice. This is just too cool to not do. I love it. And it can be either one or usually a blend, a mix. But eventually, when a person's practice is healthy and sound, it turns so that the person is practicing not just for themselves, not just for their own sense of feeling peaceful or whatever, but they're practicing for other beings. They're practicing on behalf of others. So there's a difference when someone shows up to, let's say, a Sunday service in, an initial part of their training, and there's a very healthy way to do this, where they're showing up because they really need community, and they really need connection, and they really need the practice, and the Dharma is incredibly nourishing. And that's beautiful, and that's necessary. And there's another kind of practice where you show up not only for that, but also because you know that by your showing up, you're encouraging other people, and you're nourishing other people, and you're contributing to not just yourself and how you feel that day, but you're contributing to everybody. And that becomes just as strong, if not a more powerful motivator than just showing up for yourself, for what you're getting out of it for you. And I've seen a number of times when that shift doesn't happen, people can tend to split because, well, it's a stunted growth pattern, in my opinion. The practice grows and evolves as we do. So, there. I guess some rambling thoughts about why people leave. There's healthy reasons for people to split. For example, they find a more beneficial practice. I don't know. Maybe the person should be doing some other kind of practice, or they find a teacher that's a better fit for them. There's no one teacher that's the package for every person on the planet. But for me, I trust the student's process, and I really do. And so if someone is practicing for a while, or maybe a long time, and then there's something going on with them that they want to take a break from the community or something, I don't try to convince them to do otherwise. My view there is to bless them. May your life go well, and may it be what you need it to be. And I trust the person's process. I don't try to convince them because it can't possibly work. There's no way. In fact, it's the inversion. There are some moments where a teacher will actually try to dissuade the person. That can happen as a skillful means. That can be one of the moves that happens to help the student. No, you shouldn't do this. It's not for you. And that can be a very effective thing to do sometimes. So, fear not, if you're in the place where you're really getting nourished from the practice, trust it and go with, what's making sense for you, with the teacher, with the practice, with the community. I think that's pretty much what I have to say right now. So in other news, I'd like to say that the mountain seat ceremony last week was amazing. It was really wonderful. And I'm really still kind of in the glow of the whole thing. And I'm really grateful for everybody's efforts in putting it together and all the immense orchestration it took to make that thing actually happen. And for me personally, I'm really just the thing that's the most important for me is that the community here is evolved enough to have an Abbot, that we're actually that formed as a community, It's much less important to me that it happens to be me at the moment, but that the community has actually gotten to that point. It's very inspiring to me, and I feel lucky to be a part of the whole thing and to be able to share the experience with everyone. So thank you for your practice, everybody, and for continuing to engage in this important project, and we'll see you in the Zendo.